All right. I'm stocked with snacks and supplies. As per recommendations from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We are in Steamboat today. It is March 5th. This guy looks a bit lost. I won't run him over even if he is lost. How's that? Because I'm not a racist. Or something, or a murderer. I'm probably not either. Well, I am a white guy. I am an older white guy. The bane of the communists' existence, at least in the United States, probably in England also, and probably in Europe. Us white guys are quite hated by the communists out there because we don't put up with their shit. Well, okay, that's not the right way to put it. Because we don't believe their shit. For some reason. I don't get it, but for some reason, white men have got the highest resistance, for some reason, to communist influence. Now, I'm not sure why, but we are number one. We are number one. We are enemy number one on the list. White women are on that list. Black men are on that list. And, lesser black women. So there's definitely a race component going on here. It's probably a society thing. But if you can break it down by race, I mean, that doesn't mean it's actually race. That means that different races have philosophies that are shared, more likely. That's probably what it is. I mean, in our country, what were all of us boomers taught? We were taught that freedom is extremely important. And we were also taught that responsibility is extremely important. We were also taught that honesty is the best policy and other things. I mean, there are certain things that we grew up with. And not only that, but pretty much everyone in our society had that kind of an upbringing, around our age. But then there are different flavors of that, There's like definitely black people in inner cities had a different flavor of education than we had. So, I mean, that's just how it's going to be. You're in this urban environment. Urban has always been more to the left than the conservative rural areas, and that's kind of where I'm from, is conservative rural areas. So, what this has to do with anything, I really don't know. I don't even know how I got started on it. But maybe it's because it's Super Tuesday. And here on Super Tuesday, apparently the white men once again prevail. Of course, the realistic way of looking at that is that all free people prevail. And of course, if you're on the left, it's all white supremacy. But the dirty little secret about a white supremacist, to a leftist anyway, the dirty little secret that they don't like to talk about is that it doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your race is. If you're against them, you're a white supremacist. They can't really parse anything out. They're so blinded by their ideology. Yeah. And if you've listened to my channel, you know that I'm obviously a conservative populist, and that I absolutely do not like leftism, and that leftist hacks I reserve some pretty harsh judgment for. But you also may not know that I do have friends and acquaintances that are on the left. I mean, and some family that is a little further left than they should be. to put it correctly, to put it bluntly. But I have, and some of these people I trust, and they're my friends. And I have people that within those groups that are extremely intelligent, and some that aren't. And for that matter, that goes the same for the right. I have a lot of friends on the right that are extremely intelligent, and some of them aren't. It is quite interesting that you would think, okay, well, the smarter you are, the more you're going to have things figured out correctly, right? That's what drives everyone to believe that they are smarter than the people they don't agree with. That's just baked in. So I understand that. And if you listen to the leftists, and they're chuckling, and chortling about how smart they are, and then you listen to the people on the right chuckling, and same thing, chortling, I guess, how smart they are, I am going to say that the people on the left that believe they're smart could well be smart. The people on the right that believe they're smart could just as easily be smart. What is pretty amazing to me is that of the people, the smartest people that I know, there are people that are on the left and people that are on the right. I'm going to go right through this one. Okay. Yeah. We're getting into that really really slippery time of day here. Get that. You guys didn't see what I just did. If they had just saw what I did, they wouldn't have done that. But he was actually having a hard time backing out. I was watching him. He was spinning out. He's in four-wheel drive, too. He was having issues. I don't have good snow tires on this car. They're not the worst, but anyway. So back to this thought that intelligence has nothing to do with belief. The more that I see intelligent people from every background, right? Every background, every race, every political scent out there. Super smart people believe what they believe, regardless of their intelligence, whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left. Now, there are some differences that can be gleaned, I suppose. If you are on the right, you believe in morals. I mean, the old-fashioned kind of morals. And that is, you treat everyone the way you want to be treated. Really, it boils down to that. What I find interesting is that the left doesn't see things that way. Their version of morals is different. Their version of morals is that if you actually look at it, you can never treat people the way they want to be treated, because unless you know them, you don't know how they want to be treated. Which is an interesting thing to consider, because you have to drop the idea of good and bad to get to that kind of reasoning. Yet we know that evil exists. Good and bad, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, does exist. And the left characterizes evil in a whole different way than the right does. Like I said, you can't really even be good to somebody unless you know things like on the left, like their pronouns or their beliefs or whatever. You might offend them somehow by saying something that you could say, certainly to a conservative, where good and bad is a well understood principle, and it's actually, I guess the term baked in is stuck in my head. It's baked into every one of us, including the people on the left. But the left, they do an extremely thorough job of trying to exercise, as an exorcist, exercise that thought out of their heads. I'm not going to make it. I'm not even going to bother. I might make it. Oh, I'm going to make it. Oh, yeah. All right. So, there are differences that we can see. On the right, all you have to do is treat a person the way you want to be treated, and you're in good shape. On the right. On the left, you can't do that. There's no possible way that you can ever be good to somebody without first understanding minute details of their life. And that involves understanding and then buying the gender bullshit, the myth of gender, which is sadly being extremely heavily pushed. What was it, in Brazil? I think it was, yeah. That Tim Pool and Elon Musk kind of got into a thing because in Brazil it's illegal to misgender somebody. So, again, basically saying that there is absolutely no way that you can be I don't know that I want to try to get around this guy or not. I'm thinking I'm happy right here. I got a guy behind me who's kind of on my ass. He probably wants me to go around this guy. I didn't want to get around it before we stopped up here. Yeah, so that way if he wants to change lanes or whatever, Yeah, he's just running the median, or running the middle of the road. So there are differences between the left and the right as far as being able to actually be good. On the left, you really can't be good to other people unless you know intimately their thinking. And there's no way to know that unless everyone on the left comes out with a bio that is somehow available to you to look at before you say anything to them. Just want to point that out. When you're on the left, there's no way anyone can actually treat you decently. But that's not by accident. That's by design. Because the left is looking for reasons to be butthurt. That's what they're doing. That is, I think, the whole point of gender bullshit. It's to further the ability for the left to be butthurt about absolutely nothing, but make a huge deal out of it. To the point that countries make laws protecting this butthurt bullshit, like what Brazil did. Of course, look at who's running Brazil. A fucking communist is running Brazil. Is it Lula? Piece of shit that stole the election? Yeah, that's my opinion. They don't want you to be able to be nice to them. What they want is they want to be able to divide and conquer, and this is their way of spreading this out as far as they can into the community. If they can achieve this, they can break pretty much everyone's bonds. That's really what they'd like to do. It's just evil. You know, evil is clever. It's like ridiculous looking on his face, but in practice, which is it's happening now, you can see the practical application of this kind of evil. You know, people are going to jail and are going to go to jail for misgendering. That's such bullshit. It's always been bullshit. It will continue to be bullshit. But that's what the communist left is installing as fast as they can, as many places as they can get it done. Canada, Brazil, those are probably two of the latest. I think Canada is awful. I believe in Canada, you could end up going to prison for life for hate speech or some bullshit. So the idea of freedom of speech in Canada, well, did it even ever exist? It's a real shame what's happening in Canada. They're pretty far along. Not that we aren't, but that's pretty ridiculous. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest, and by golly, I have. This is a typical dirty ass drive, but it probably wasn't going to be any better all week long. Today, by the way, changing subjects, today, Tuesday, the 5th, is our only day that we are supposed to not get snow. But as you can see, we're still getting snow. So the rest of the week, we're supposed to get snow. I had to come up here and get this done sometime this week. And that's what I'm doing right now. I have to remember you're watching if I decide to use this. So I turn my wipers on for you. That's what I meant by that. I can put up with a little bit of junk on the windshield, but it's a lot more noticeable in your view because you're looking at this gigantic view, and the camera's lens is probably 2 inches away from the windshield. So all the little droplets that I'm looking at are a lot larger. I mean, you're seeing that the road does eventually dry out a little bit. but I'm also of the opinion I need to get around these people. If I can. There you go. That's a little better. I'm already a quarter of a mile ahead of those people. They were doing 40. Going a little fast, so I really don't want to go that fast. So let me readjust my speed momentarily. Okay. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Another reasonably filthy drive, but it had to be done. What else is going on? You know, that's really, yeah, I don't really want to get started on anything else. I've already got well, it may not hurt though. It is a pretty day. The snow, the water, I love the snow. I don't like the water. I don't like it because it gets on the windows. But the feel of today is really nice. Late winter, a little bit snowy. We've been going through some pretty serious snowstorms. We got, in Craig, we got 14 inches, roughly, it may be a little more, in the last couple of days. Guess I can undo my turn signal. You can see on the road, there's a lot of snow up here. They really got dumped on, and this is a wet snow. This is not that fluffy, powdery stuff. that this area is known for. This is the cement-like heavy wet snow that's actually really good for the water around here, for plants around here, for lakes and streams and ponds and creatures that drink out of those, including us. We do. And the storms come in, they're really windy and strong, powerful storms. Big wind, a lot of dust. Okay. It's amazing how much dust gets all over your vehicle. You'd think snow would be clean and pristine, but snow contains a lot of dust, a lot of little particulates. I mean, that's where ice crystals form, I believe, when it comes to snow. They form around a little particulate up in the air. Maybe a piece of pollen, maybe a teeny little tiny piece of quartz, maybe some dander, whatever. Something up there that's floating around. I am in the Jeep today. You probably can tell it's not a curvy, rounded car by looking at the nose of it, looking at the bottom of your view. An old Cherokee Sport. Love this little car. It's done me really good this year. Actually, it's done me pretty good, in its lifetime. We must have a slug of slow cars here. I've slowed down to under the speed limit. Just barely under it, though. We're moving good. Getting around that really, really slow person was helpful. There goes Cherokee Sport. Oh, well, nobody behind him. Oh, he's a county truck. Okay, I get it. That's why he's not going real fast. One of the reasons I like driving this Jeep on these nasty days is because the windshield stays so much cleaner. I can go through this mud or this nasty crap. There's always something thrown up in the air. But because of the shape of this car, and it contributes to it doesn't get as good of gas mileage as that little tracker does, but it keeps the windshield cleaner, and to a degree, it keeps some of the rocks off of the windshield. It'll actually blow some of the rocks away. So that's a nice thing. We got a tiny little bit of snow last night in Craig. The big storm moved out, did all the shoveling yesterday. It snowed all day yesterday, but it didn't really accumulate until last night. And then it just a little, maybe a half of an inch of snow or something like that fell. Just enough to do this to the roads, to make them really nasty. But to contrast this, if I'm in the tracker on a day like today, I pretty much run my windshield wipers all the time, nonstop, and I'm pretty much nonstop spraying the windshield. You know, for the gas mileage that I might save, I probably spend that money on windshield wiper fluid in that little car. Because I'll go through a bottle of that stuff in one day in weather like this. You know, I'll go through a gallon of it. That's like $4 or $5 a gallon. So for the stuff, you know, I make my own up in the summer, but in the winter I need something that won't freeze. So Trump is doing really good today. I am not voting today, though. I don't want to let the state of Colorado know how I'm going to vote, because they'll just counter it. They've done that here. I know people don't believe that the election was rigged, but the election was rigged. I think that the evidence is reasonable. That's where that belief comes in. If you're on the left, you absolutely do not believe that the elections are rigged. You believe they are the safest elections ever, if you're on the left. That's what you say, anyway, whether you believe it or not. But if you're on the right, we know the elections are rigged. We know that. We saw it happen. We saw it happen in real time. We saw what happened in Georgia and in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Arizona. Who did I miss? Michigan, Minnesota. Well, that's pretty good. We saw what happened. We know what the left does now. And we have countered in ways that we can. That's not stopping them by any means. But there are things that we can do, I think we are doing. I will not vote early ever again. It's going to be always on election day, or I'm not voting, period. But I'll make sure to vote. But I'm not voting in a primary because it doesn't matter. Trump's going to win the Republican nomination here in Colorado, and the state has no real reason to put their foot on it unless they think they can throw it to Nikki Haley. But why bother, you know? If the state did that, that would just be their, they were so angry they weren't thinking they need to keep their powder dry for November, which is what they'll do. I think it was a Southwest jet, probably not carrying illegals, probably carrying skiers. You may have seen that, you may not have. It's a minute till noon right now. So I believe that a lot of states, even Colorado, we are doing what we can to thwart the Democrats' attempts to steal the election. The difference is that we have to play by the rules and they don't. They're always going to have the advantage. Always. Because they don't care if they get caught. Look what happened. People knew what they did. They didn't give a shit. Look at Fani Willis. Look at all the things that she's admitted to doing like no big deal. She doesn't. She's apparently unaware that her criminal activities as a DA are illegal. She's apparently unaware of that. She apparently believes that with the power she has comes the freedom to do any goddamn thing she wants to do. Yes, cussing for that one. And no, I'm not taking God's name in vain. I'm saying the things that she has done are definitely something that would be damned by God. Evil things. Oh man. Did you hear that? Another chip in my brand new windshield. Tiny one, but still it's there. Yeah, well, let's see if it's a chip. Oh yeah, it's a chip. Weirdly, I have 3 chips in the same spot on my windshield, all within maybe 1.25 inches of each other. There's apparently a spot here, right in front of my face, by the way. And I'm actually thinking about this year trying to fill those tiny little chips up. If I could find some optically clear epoxy resin. I've seen some people do this on YouTube, and it actually worked okay. It was a better outcome. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. It made their window look better. They used I think a windshield repair kit, that you could get off the shelf, and they just put tiny bits of epoxy in these seams, and then used pieces of tape or something on top of them to even things out. It actually worked pretty well. And you may have noticed in the last couple of minutes the road's dried up. They're going to get wet in Hayden into town, but they should dry out again until we get to Craig, and then they'll be wet again. Just not enough airflow to dry them off as quickly as a highway dries off today. I've got this idea. It's been brewing since building materials have gotten so expensive. I suspended work on my garage. I have a foundation in, and it's nice, and it's living. I mean, it's working well. It's funny, it did actually crack out. However, it was more due to the temperature that I poured it and the amount of rebar that I put in it, which is going to sound kind of backwards, but I put a ton of rebar, probably a lot more than that, quite actually. I did what is called a double mat rebar. I did it every 12 or 16 inches. I'd have to look. I think it's every 12 inches. It might be every 16 inches. The reason that I did that was because the building inspector allowed me to do this. My lot is on clay. If you understand what that means, you know clay is notoriously difficult to build on. So you either need to do a proper foundation in bad clay, you need to put your building up on piers like it would be down at the ocean, and what you end up with is you end up with a friction I can't think of the actual, the complete term. But your piers are held in place by friction. When you drill holes into the clay, you actually want that drill to kind of wobble around so that the hole is not just like a straight up and down hole. You want it to be a little bit, wider and narrower. And then when you pour your concrete, the concrete will fill, properly done. The concrete will fill that cavity back up, and it will create an obscene amount of friction. So it's a friction pier, but I can't think of there's another word that I think they use to describe it. They are, well, to continue, so then you pour these piers in, and typically when you do a pier foundation, you will top it with a grade beam, which is a beam of concrete just filled with rebar. So, and I did that with my house. But with the garage, kind of a different principle. Understanding that clay will heave, it will go up and down, and it will... My dad believed that the clay in the springtime around here, it would be like a wave, a slow motion wave going through the country, where it would expand. This wave would slowly travel through the clay. And he could be right, because in the springtime, after the big thaw, or during the big thaw, the water gets down into the clay and expands it. So what happens to pretty much every foundation is that if it's not super strong, it's going to crack. So when I did my garage foundation, it's kind of a call it experimental, and I'm glad the building inspector allowed me to do it. So what I did was I did a double mat of number 4 rebar, which is 1/2 inch rebar. I believe it was on 12. It could have been on 16 centers. I think it was on 12-inch centers, though. Pretty massive. Hard to walk through, hard to tie. And then around the perimeter of the garage, I built like a typical unibody. Let's call it a unibody foundation, where you combine kind of a grade beam with your floor slab. And I put a lot of rebar into the edge, like I would, basically like a grade beam. Now the idea is that the strength that I built the floor to with that double mat is strong enough to make a suspended floor. So if I were building a building, right, this floor could be suspended, around the perimeter of that building and be strong, or ever so many feet. The idea of doing that is to counteract any of the force that is going to happen with that clay underneath that garage, because that garage floor is poured right on top of clay. Now I did use some packable, fill, some drainable fill, so that if I get water underneath there, it has a way to get out. But there was no attempt to try to hide or get rid of the clay, because the clay is over 20 feet thick, probably over 30 feet thick there. It's huge, and it's really expansive. So my garage floor is built to float on top of the clay like a ship floats on top of a wave. That's the idea. And maybe over time, I would say probably a really long period of time, the garage may start tipping. Someday it would be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? But probably a long time from now. Anyway, that's the theory behind my garage floor. And it took a lot of concrete, and it took a lot of rebar to build that. That was not a cheap floor at all. Anyway, I poured that in November 2 years ago. And it was a day barely above freezing, and it was a day that had been below freezing for a week or two. So the ground was chilled and the rebar was chilled, and I did have blankets over everything to keep the rain and the snow and stuff that we were getting out. So I was able to keep the concrete from freezing, but just barely. So the concrete is strong. However, I believe what happened, and it created these tiny little cracks in the foundation, is that because the rebar was cold, because the ground, everything was cold, that in the summertime, when it warmed up finally, the rebar expanded, the ground, everything expanded, and I believe that the tiny little cracks that I got in my foundation, in the floor, were caused by the rebar expanding. The interesting thing about the cracks is they're all really tiny, and there's no height difference between one crack or another. It might be that the cracks don't go all the way through the concrete, but even if they do, there is so much metal holding the concrete together that the cracks aren't moving. And they're very tiny cracks. I filled them up last year with like a crack filler, right? It was meant for cracks quite a bit larger than the cracks I have in my concrete. And the floor is perfect. I mean, the cracks are absolutely not a deal, which is really a good thing to see, because the floor does need to be strong. Anyway, I suspended building because lumber prices had gone up by about a factor of 4 in that year. And that was the COVID stuff, but I think that the globalists have done everything they can to keep the prices high. Obviously, that piece of shit Joe Biden and his piece of shit administration want to keep building materials out of people's hands. You know, the globalists do not want us, regular people, to have the ability to continue bettering ourselves. They want us to not have things anymore. They truly do. They're stingy bastards. There's no climate change. There's no fuel scarcity. There's no hunger. There's no reason for war. All of this stuff is cooked up by the people in power, including making fuel expensive and scarce, making the price of everything extremely high. And it's kind of easy to see, if you're paying attention, when you see what the globalists are trying to do with farming. Everywhere in the world, they're trying to shut down food production. That's going to do two things if they're successful. And they've already been somewhat successful. They've raised the price of food, which has been one of their goals. But their other goal is to starve people. That's the natural result of taking away the food supply. You can't do that without starving people. That's what they want to do. They want to starve people, but they're using environmentalist bullshit, climate change bullshit, to lie to us. Like, oh, we care for you so much that we want to save the environment for you. No, you care for us so little, and you hate us so much because we are ideologically opposed to communism that you want to kill us off. So fuck you, globalists, you rotten fucks. And in the spirit of that, I have chosen not to give the globalists my money when it comes to this garage. In fact, I may source my own materials from a different source. Not a hardware store, not a lumber yard. I'm thinking about that. There are some pretty cool things I could do that would be a good workaround and limit my exposure to having to give money to people that hate me. Quite honestly, they don't want my money. They just don't want me to be able to prosper. They're trying to starve me out and industry in this country. All this stuff is easy to see if you're looking for it. If you're on the left and you're not looking for it, though, you would find the things that I'm saying shocking, crazy. I must be a white supremacist or something to say those crazy things. No, I'm actually looking at the facts of what's going on. And it's there for everyone to see if you want to. And so, again, getting back to that concept of it doesn't matter how intelligent you are. It matters what you believe. You can be the smartest guy in the world and be a huge leftist or a huge conservative. Doesn't matter. But there are differences, mainly in the understanding of morals. There are differences that will help thinking people choose the proper side. In other words, a logical side that most people understand. See, the left is playing a game. They're trying to obfuscate that the logic and the logical thinking that goes in to believing in God. And really, the one thing that the left has a really hard time killing is the concept of treating other people the way you want to be treated is the best thing that you can do in this world. They want to kill that off. And again, I'm getting back into the transgender bullshit. But the idea, though, is that the left is saying, no, you cannot even do that. To be nice to people, you have got to understand their pronouns. You've got to know so much about them. It's an impossibility. You cannot be nice to people. Basically, the left's policy is that people are just going to have to hate each other because that's where the left gets their power. If they can make that happen, everywhere they can make that happen, they do good. Everywhere they can't make that happen, they fail. So people that believe in God and are not leftist cultists. There are a lot of religious cults out there now under the guise of Christianity that buy the butthurt gender equity bullshit theory as religion. What would Jesus do? He would use pronouns that you want or some bullshit. I mean, that's where the left is deceiving you. That's the weakness that you can actually use to understand the world. So, whether you're super intelligent or not, when you're believing the left, you're ignoring actual morals. You're ignoring the logic that is there because those things are different from the left and the right. Those beliefs are incredibly different. And a lot of people don't even think about that on the left. They don't even get to the point where they're going to consider that. They're basically unaware. When they do gain some awareness, they become conservatives. So, anyway, we have made another successful trip. I'm happy to say I'm going to stop and fill this vehicle up so that I am ready to go next time, because it will probably be this vehicle. We are in what appears to be a really wet pattern. At this point in time, it doesn't look like it's going away. So I'm going to keep this car, which is now my best functional four-wheel drive. Well, my pickup is probably a pretty good four-wheel drive vehicle also. Anyway, what a mess. If you all are going somewhere, drive safe and stay conservative. Talk to you later. Bye.